Hey guys, tonight we step quietly through the wooden door of a modest, timber-framed home. The hearth crackles gently to your left, its warmth wrapping around the room like a wool blanket. The scent of barley porridge lingers in the air, mingling with the faint trace of beeswax from a flickering candle. Shadows dance along the low ceiling beams. It's early dawn maybe, and you're already hearing the creak of floorboards as someone moves about with practiced care. This is a medieval household, and this is a wife's world. You probably won't survive this not because of danger, but because of exhaustion. Medieval wives lived lives packed from dawn to dusk, balancing survival, loyalty, labor, and love, all without a break. And unlike what you might think, being a wife wasn't just about obedience or childbearing. It meant responsibility, status, and a never-ending list of duties. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You wake up on a straw-stuffed mattress wrapped in linen sheets that you stitched yourself. It's cold, always is, before sunrise. Your husband is already up, heading out to tend the animals. But your work begins even earlier. The first task, the fire. You rake the coals from the night before, hoping enough embers remain to catch flame. If not, you'll strike flint or borrow embers from a neighbor. Without fire, there's no cooking, no heat, no light. It's the heart of the home, and keeping it alive is your first daily duty. Next, bread. You pull yesterday's dough from the cool pantry, already risen, and heavy with the smell of yeast. The oven must be stoked. You knead the dough with tired hands, fold in some ground dry or barley. White wheat is expensive and reserved for the wealthy. You shape loaves for your family, and a smaller one to offer the priest. Tithing, after all, isn't just coins. As the bread rises, you prepare breakfast. It's not much pottage, maybe. A watery mix of grain and broth flavored with a few herbs from your garden. If you're lucky, there's a scrap of meat or a bit of cheese to stir in. You portion it out, set aside some for your children, and maybe leave a warm bowl for your husband when he comes in from the chill. While the pot simmers, you check on your children if you have them. The baby needs feeding. The toddler, still half asleep, is reluctant to rise. You dress them in hand-sewn tunics already mended at the elbows. Every child is another mouth to feed, but also a source of pride, purpose, and eventually help around the home. You glance outside. The chores are waiting. Water must be fetched. The garden checked for slugs. If you're lucky enough to keep chickens, you gather eggs. If you own a pig, you'll check the pen and make sure no boards have come loose. Even without formal work, your day is already full. And it's not even mid-morning. But you're not just a domestic worker. You're also a household manager. You keep track of supplies, salt, flour, oil. You plan meals based on what's left, what's growing, and what might be traded. You oversee the brewing of ale, the drying of herbs, and the slow fermentation of cabbage or leeks for later use. If you fall behind, the entire household suffers. And sometimes you're more than a manager. You're a merchant. If you live near a town, you walk to the market with baskets of eggs, herbs, or cloth to sell or trade. You haggle with butchers, gossip with bakers, and return with iron needles or onions. If you're wealthier, you may run a small alehouse or a textile business from your own home. Medieval wives were often entrepreneurs, not in name but in reality. Marriage didn't mean retreat from public life. It meant new authority sometimes over servants, younger women, even apprentices. Your reputation as a wife wasn't just about obedience, it was about competence. If you managed the home poorly, it was seen as a reflection on your husband. If you managed it well, the entire family rose in status. As the sun rises higher, your day only deepens. Guests might arrive. A neighbor might come calling, asking for help with a sick child. The priest might visit, expecting hospitality and a seat near the hearth. You offer what you can: warm ale bread, maybe a little cheese wrapped in cloth. Always smiling, always gracious. Because hospitality is not optional, it's expected. Later in the day, you mend clothes, spin wool, or sit by the fire sewing while your children nap. Your fingers are calloused from needles, your back sore from bending. And yet, there is something quiet and powerful in your role. An unspoken authority that flows from your hands, your rhythm, your daily devotion. And when the sun finally begins to set, your work doesn't stop. Supper must be cooked, children washed, beds prepared, the hearth built up again for the long, cold night ahead. Your husband may return with news or silence or a wound from work. You tend to him as needed, your role shifting again, now nurse, now counselor, now keeper of peace. And only when the fire dims and the room is still do you lie down at last. The straw mattress creaks, your muscles ache, but your home stands, your children sleep, and your husband breathes evenly beside you. And tomorrow you'll do it all again. But first, rest. Morning returns as it always does, without drama, without pause. The light spills through the narrow cracks in the shutters, casting thin golden stripes across the packed earthen floor. You stretch beneath your woven blanket just enough to shake off the stiffness, and then rise before the rest of the house fully stirs. It's time again. The life of a medieval wife isn't carved into stone. It's sewn into fabric, stirred into porridge, measured in repetition. What makes today different from yesterday isn't the task list, it's how you navigate it. You're not just running a home. You're orchestrating one. And it begins with routine. You kneel beside the fire, coaxing the embers to life. There's an art to it now, your fingers quick and sure. One bundle of dried twigs, one careful breath, a few curls of smoke, and then there it is, warmth. That subtle roar of life beginning again. No need for prayers aloud, this is your morning devotion. But today there's more than just chores waiting. It's washing day. You gather linens stiff with the dust and labor of the past week, sheets, smocks, the little undertunics the children wear beneath their outer clothes. You carry them to the stream, a basket on your hip, a heavy bar of lye soap in your hand. The water's cold, even in summer, but it wakes your skin and sharpens your focus. You scrub against smooth stones, rubbing and rinsing, repeating until the fabric breathes again. Sometimes other wives join you, and for a moment, the stream bank becomes a forum, a place of laughter, whispers, advice shared between splashes. Who's expecting, who's widowed, who's dealing with a drunk husband or a dying goat. It's not idle chatter. It's survival strategy hidden in the folds of gossip. You return home with heavy arms and wet linen flapping behind you, like flags of your labor. You wring them out and hang them across ropes or beams, depending on your home. And while they dry, your mind shifts to food again. What's left in the pantry? A wheel of cheese is getting soft, best to use it before mold claims too much. There's salt pork still and a few onions from the cellar. With these you can make a stew, a good one, filling. You slice the onions thin and scrape the green parts free. Waste nothing. The broth simmers while the fire roars. And as the smell fills the room, your stomach growls, but you serve others first. Always. Later in the afternoon, you sit with your needlework. Some of it is for function, patching a torn sleeve reinforcing the soles of stockings. But other stitches, they're for pride. A little embroidery on a collar, a delicate edge on a towel. You don't do it for compliments. You do it because it turns survival into beauty. A quiet rebellion against the drudgery of sameness. Your oldest child needs teaching, so you show her how to thread a needle or how to recognize herbs, mint for the stomach, rue for fever. Education in your hands isn't books. It's memory transferred directly from mother to daughter, like passing down an heirloom too delicate for shelves. Your husband comes in early today, his face clouded with thought. You listen, not because you're required to, but because you understand that your role is more than physical. It's emotional labor, too. You're his mirror, his sounding board. When he doubts himself, you offer the quiet words that keep the house balanced. But it's not all quiet deference. You hold power here even if no one speaks it aloud. You decide how the garden is planted. You determine when the food will last. You notice when your neighbor's chickens are mysteriously laying fewer eggs, perhaps someone's been stealing. You mention it to your husband in passing, and he takes your words seriously. He should. And when there's conflict in the village over land inheritance or bad blood, it's often the wives who stitch peace back together behind the scenes. Over loaves of bread, over shared tasks, over whispered meetings behind the market. The men argue in public. The women repair in private. As the sky turns dusky, you help your youngest child say a few simple prayers. It's not about doctrine, it's about rhythm, about knowing where the day ends and where sleep begins. You wrap the child in wool, stroke her hair, hum a melody passed down from your own mother. Something about the moon, something about dreams. And later, after the stew has cooled and the house has quieted, you step outside just briefly. The air is damp. Somewhere an owl calls. Your hands still smell faintly of soap and smoke. You breathe slowly. You think of all the things you did today and how none of it will be remembered. And yet somehow it still matters. Because the medieval wife does not live her legacy in stories or stained glass. She lives it in continuity, in a fire that never goes out, in children who wake fed, in a home that endures. And now the fire waits again. So you return and prepare to do it all once more. The rooster calls too early. You're still tangled in sleep when the sound echoes across the fields. But your body knows better than your mind. It starts to move before thought fully forms. You rise with a soft groan, swing your legs over the side of the bed, and place bare feet on the cold floor. Another day in a medieval wife's world begins not with excitement or dread, but with acceptance. Because this life isn't extraordinary, it's expected. And still it's deeply yours. Today is a market day. Not every wife in every village goes to the market, of course. But you do. You've been managing the household well this week. There are extra eggs to barter, and the linen you spun during winter is finally ready to sell. You gather your goods into baskets lined with rough cloth, checking everything twice. You know what you're bringing, but more importantly, you know what you're hoping to bring back. Before you leave, you prepare the house. You stir up the fire again, set out bread for the children, leave instructions for the older ones. Sweep the hearth, gather firewood, watch the little ones. You assign your eldest daughter to mind the soup bubbling low in the pot. It's a cabbage base stretched with beans, thin but filling. Then you step outside. The road to town is rutted and muddy, but the sky is clear, and the birds have already begun their work. You balance the baskets carefully and walk steadily passing other women doing the same. You nod in greeting, fall into step. Market is as much social web as economy. You hear the stories flow around you, who's nursing a newborn, whose husband fell from a ladder, whose goats have been coughing. By the time you reach the market, the square is already buzzing. Stalls are opening, traders shouting, and the scent of smoked fish and roasted chestnuts hangs heavy in the air. You move through the crowd with purpose. You know who offers fair prices and who tries to cheat the distracted. You trade 6 eggs for a scoop of barley, 2 bundles of linen for a small ceramic jug, hand-glazed and flecked with blue. You're careful not to overspend, coin is rare, but you allow yourself a tiny treat, a twist of honeyed nuts for your youngest child, who's been teething. But more than goods, you're here for news. You hear that a neighboring village had a fire last week, that the baron is raising rents, that a young widow is being courted by 2 brothers, and it's getting awkward. This isn't idle talk, it's strategy. The news shapes your decisions, who you can trust, where to plant extra barley, whether to hide that last ham a little deeper in the cellar. On the way home, your shoulders ache from the weight of the baskets, but your mind is busy tallying what you'll make of your new supplies. Tonight's meal will be better. A barley pottage thickened with lentils and topped with a few curls of pork fat. There's enough left for tomorrow, too. Back home, you unload everything and set to work. The kitchen becomes a hive again. You clean the barley, start the fire, and glance around at your children. They're restless, so you draw them into the task. One peels turnips, another fetches water. The baby crawls underfoot, trying to chew on your hem. You sigh, but smile too. You set the table, wooden boards laid across trestles. No plates, just trenchers of stale bread. The older kids help ladle out the food. Your husband returns looking more tired than usual, and you offer a quiet hand on his shoulder. Nothing needs to be said. You both understand this life, this rhythm. After supper, you tend to the household ledger, a mental one, not written. You calculate what was spent, what's left, and how long it will last. There's still flour, and your herb garden is growing again. You'll be fine for a while. Then just before night falls, you sew. It's not because you love it, but because something always needs stitching. A child's sleeve has torn. A towel has frayed. You work by firelight, squinting. The fire crackles low, the children finally doze, your husband snoring gently nearby. And there you are, alone with thread and silence. And in this quiet moment, you reflect. No one will sing songs about this day. But you've fed your family. You've bargained wisely. You've kept your house from slipping out of balance. You've spun order from chaos. And that, in the medieval world, is real power, even if no one calls it that. The rain starts just before dawn. You hear it before you see it, soft, tapping against the shutters, a delicate drumbeat on the thatch above your head. The kind of rain that seeps into everything, the straw, the cloth, the bones. You pull your shawl tighter as you rise, already knowing the day will be slow and damp, full of shifting chores and wet hems. But you've weathered worse. On days like this, your duties change not in number, but in nature. You won't walk to the stream or the market. You won't kneel in the garden. Instead, the house becomes your entire universe, a wooden box, humming with life, noise, heat, and breath. A medieval wife becomes weather-wise, adjusting to the moods of nature without complaint. The first order of business is the leak. A drip has started near the window, tracing a line down the plastered wall. You find a wooden bucket to catch it, and wedge a bit of cloth under the sill to slow the seep. The thatch will need patching soon, something to mention to your husband when the sky clears. With the rain falling and the fields out of reach, your children grow restless quickly. So you gather them near the hearth and begin work on a project meant to look like play. Spinning wool. You show the older ones how to pull the fibers, twist them, feed them into the drop spindle. It's tedious, meditative, and essential. This is how clothes happen, not in markets, not from merchants, but here with sore fingers and spools of time. You glance over to the cheesecloth hanging by the hearth. Yesterday's milk has curdled into something promising. You unwrap it slowly, revealing a soft, pale lump that smells slightly sharp cheese in its infancy. You'll salt it gently, press it in a clay mold, and let it rest. A wife's skills aren't only about immediate needs. Some are patient crafts requiring faith and memory. And speaking of patience, there's mending. Always mending. You sort through a pile of garments needing repair. A torn apron, a sock with holes, a tunic ripped at the shoulder from a boy's rough play. You work with needle and thread as the rain drums on. The repetition is oddly comforting. Stitch, pull, knot, snip. Midday comes and you prepare a warm broth, the kind meant more for comfort than calories. It's made from leftover bones, a few wilting leeks, and dried herbs from last summer's harvest. As it simmers, the house fills with steam and fragrance. The windows fog. You wipe one clear and peer outside, just gray sky and puddles. But it's enough to remind you how cozy your little kingdom has become. After lunch, your husband returns drenched and sour-tempered. Rain ruins fieldwork, delays obligations. You help him peel off his wet cloak, hang it near the fire, and offer a bowl of soup. He grumbles at first, but then quiets. You've learned how to soothe without words, how to turn food and fire into peace. Later you tend to your herb bundles. They hang from wooden beams, tied with coarse string lavender for calm, sage for aches, rosemary for memory. You untie a few, crush the leaves gently in your palm. The scent lifts your mood even as the gray sky presses low. You set aside a bit of chamomile for tea tonight. Sleep will come easier. Toward evening, there's a knock at the door. A neighbor cloaked, dripping, asking if you've any spare candle tallow. She's run low. You invite her in trade a small lump of tallow for a scrap of wool. It's a fair deal, but more importantly, it maintains the network. Women support one another quietly between doors and over fences with favors that never reach the Lord's ears. The rain continues into night. You sit with your children again, telling them a story handed down from your own mother. A tale of a clever fox, a brave girl, a treasure hidden in a forest. Their eyes widen as you speak, their bodies curled like kittens near the hearth. These stories aren't just entertainment. They're education, protection, and legacy woven into the fabric of daily life. And then the moment of pause. The fire cracks. The storm softens. You wrap your shawl tighter and look around at what you've held together. The children fed the house dry, the peace maintained, the day managed. No one outside will know how much this took. But you do. Because the rain didn't stop you. It simply taught you to move differently, to listen more closely, to sew tighter, to stretch food farther, to carry the fire inside when the world outside turns cold. And in that quiet, candlelit stillness, you feel something unexpected. Pride. The rain has passed by morning, leaving the air thick and heavy with the scent of wet earth soot and wood smoke. Puddles dot the yard like shallow mirrors, and the thatched roof drips in slow intervals, but the sky is brightening. The world is returning to motion, and so are you. Your boots squelch slightly as you step outside, lifting your skirts to avoid the worst of the mud. Today, the garden needs tending. The downpour may have flattened some of the tender shoots. You carry your basket and a short-handled hoe, knowing that this little plot of soil, maybe no larger than a bedroom, will shape your family's meals for weeks to come. The earth yields slowly but willingly. Rows of cabbages are beginning to firm. A few carrots still cling to damp soil. Leeks, onions charred. They're sturdy things designed for medieval resilience. You thin weed and gather, wiping your brow with a cloth from your apron. The work is quiet, meditative. Sometimes you hum without realizing it. As a medieval wife, your relationship with the land is personal, not poetic, practical. The garden isn't a place of escape. It's a ledger in green, a balance sheet of roots and stems and leaves. If it thrives, you thrive. If it doesn't, you improvise. Or go without. By mid-morning, you've gathered enough for several days: turnips, a clutch of herbs, and a handful of peas. You clean your hands with a splash of cold water from the rain barrel and carry your harvest inside, where the house smells faintly of yesterday's fire and drying clothes. The children are up now, squabbling softly, and your husband is already gone to tend to the landlord's fields. His boots are gone from the door, his portion of bread already taken. The rhythm continues. You kneel by the fire and stir the coals again. You're not just cooking, you're managing heat, learning when to add, when to cover, how to stretch warmth over hours without wasting a single log. Firewood is precious. Every stick is accounted for. With the fire relit, you begin making ale, or at least the beginnings of it. Brewing isn't a novelty, it's a staple. Clean water isn't always guaranteed, but low-alcohol small ale is safe, nourishing, and cheaper than wine. You soak the malted grains, begin the mash, stir slowly. It will take days before it's drinkable, but you start now because you're always preparing for a future need. And while the ale sits, you turn your attention to another task, something larger, more emotional. You've been asked to assist with a birth. A neighbor, heavily pregnant, sent for help the night before, and now it's time. You leave your eldest daughter in charge of the home and walk across muddy fields with a satchel of herbs, clean linens, and a jar of goose fat. You've helped with births before, not as a midwife exactly, but as a steady, familiar hand. You know how to soothe, how to listen, how to press a cloth to a forehead, how to guide someone through that long, painful threshold between worlds. When you arrive, the woman is pale and groaning, her mother pacing nearby. The room is stifling, the air thick with worry. You roll up your sleeves and begin boil water. Wash hands murmur calm encouragement. Hours pass. The woman screams. You don't flinch. This is the work of women, messy, dangerous, sacred. When the child finally arrives, red-faced and wailing, you feel something tight in your chest release. You clean the baby, wrap it in cloth, hand it gently to its mother. You help bind the bleeding, whisper prayers, offer a sip of warmed broth. The house breathes again. You stay to help clean up, reassure the family. Tuck the mother in beneath fresh linens, and then quietly you return home. It's dusk when you walk back into your own cottage. The fire is still lit. Dinner is nearly ready, and your children run to greet you. You're exhausted, but not broken. You serve the food, wash your hands, sit for the first time in hours. Your husband asks, was it a boy or girl, and you tell him. He nods. That family will owe you a favor, he says. You nod too, but you're not thinking of favors. You're thinking of life, of how it begins and how much women do to protect it, carry it, feed it, raise it, mend it. And as you rock your own child later that night, you wonder, will she grow into this same rhythm, this same quiet strength? Probably, but not yet. Tonight she just sleeps. And so do you. You wake to silence. No wind, no rain, no restless rustling from the hearth. The house feels paused, like even the fire knows it's not time to stir. You lay there a moment longer, listening to the breathing of your children nearby. It's still dark, but already your mind is moving, sifting through tasks, remembering what needs mending, what needs soaking, what needs to be said. And then, with a quiet sigh, you rise. Today is a holy day. Not a feast day, not a major celebration, but a saint's day important enough that the priest will expect attendance and the village will shuffle into the chapel in their best garments. You have to prepare clean faces, fresh tunics, quiet children. It's not rest exactly. It's a different kind of labor. A performance of piety. You heat water for washing, one bucket at a time from the barrel to the hearth. You strip the children, scrub their cheeks and hands, run a comb through their hair. You dress them in their second-best tunics, the ones you only use for visits, church, and guests. You yourself wear a simple wool dress dyed with woad, the deep blue a bit faded now, and wrap your head in a linen coif. Before you leave, you kneel for a moment. Not in ceremony, just habit. A whispered prayer. A glance toward the window where light is beginning to stretch. You're not sure what you believe some days, but you know how to behave like you do. You walk to the church with the others, your footsteps merging into a soft procession of boots on mud and gravel. Children squabble, elders mutter a few, women clutch baskets of eggs or herbs as quiet offerings. The church is stone cold, even in summer, with a wooden door that groans like it's resisting the faithful. Inside, candles flicker and smoke curls around the rafters. You sit with your family on the left side near the wall. The priest begins the sermon, Latin phrases you don't fully understand, woven with familiar rhythms. You nod when expected, murmur the right responses. It's not about knowledge, it's about presence. About being seen. You notice who's missing. A widow with a cough. A young man with a drinking problem. A girl with a bruised cheek who hasn't been seen since market day. You tuck these absences away. You'll ask about them later, carefully. After the sermon, there's communion bread, and then something almost like social time. Neighbors exchange greetings, mothers share glances about unruly toddlers, and you hand over a small jar of pickled onions to the priest's assistant as your family's contribution. He nods gravely as if it were gold. Outside the church, you find yourself pulled aside by another wife. Her husband is injured. He stepped wrong in the fields and can't walk properly now. She's overwhelmed. You promise to come by this afternoon, offer help with the stew, or watch her children so she can fetch wood. No money will change hands. It never does. But your account with the village ledger of goodwill grows. Back home, you peel off your good clothes and hang them carefully. They'll need brushing later, and the coif must be re-bleached before the next holy day. You put on your work apron and re-enter the day. This time not as a pious soul, but as the engine of the household once more. You boil lentils, sweep ash, tend to the baby's rash with a salve you made last autumn. You spin a little wool, just enough to keep your hands busy while the stew cooks. And when your neighbor finally comes by to borrow the iron pot, you hand it to her with a smile and a few instructions on how not to scorch the bottom. Evening settles in. You sing a hymn as you work, not because you feel holy, but because the tune is beautiful and your children calm when they hear it. You think about the stories from today's sermon. A miracle. A warning. A woman who waited too long to believe. You wonder what patience means in your own life, how many years must pass before something changes. But mostly, you think about the waiting itself. Because being a wife in this world means holding time, not racing through it, not fighting it, but measuring it out like flour. A handful at a time. enough for the day. And when the stars rise one by one above your modest roof, you look up not for answers, just for quiet. And there it is. It's still early, but the sun is already painting the thatched roof golden. A breeze filters through the shutters, carrying with it the scent of warm earth, faint manure, and crushed mint from your herb patch. It's going to be a dry, hot day, the kind that makes linen cling and tempers short. But you're already moving. The bread dough must be punched down and shaped before the heat rises too high. You roll it out with strong hands, pressing, folding again. You've done this so many times your fingers could do it blind. And while you work, you think not just of the food, but of the roles you play. Wife, mother, cook, nurse, seamstress, listener, mediator. You wear them all at once, layered like petticoats. Today is a good day for soap making. You've been saving the fat from winter slaughterings, rendering it in jars kept near the hearth. And the wood ash from your fire, the best kind, fine and pale, has been stored in barrels to make lye. It's time. You carry everything to a shaded area outside near a low bench you use for messy work. The children are warned to stay away. Lye burns. You learned that the hard way once years ago. You combine the ingredients slowly, carefully stirring with a long stick. The smell is harsh, acrid, greasy, but this is how you make cleanliness out of waste. Soap that will wash hands, linens, floors, and even help fight sickness. You'll carve it into pale blocks once it sets and wrap it in cloth scraps. A few pieces will go to your neighbors. The rest will last the season. While the soap thickens and cures you, slip away to tend your herb garden. You pluck sprigs of thyme, sage, and feverfew. You sniff a patch of pennyroyal and smile it's thriving. You hang bundles to dry in the rafters later. These plants are your medicine chest. No one calls you a healer, not exactly, but you're the one they come to when babies won't sleep or bellies twist with pain. This afternoon, a young wife stops by with red eyes and quiet footsteps. She's embarrassed there's a tension between her and her husband, and she's not sure what to do. You invite her in without fuss. Sit her down. Pour her a cup of weak elderflower tea. You let her talk. This is part of your labor, too. Emotional stitching, holding together the seams of a marriage that might fray without your help. You don't judge, you just listen, ask careful questions, remind her gently of her own strength. She leaves lighter than she arrived, thanking you in hushed tones. Your own husband returns later than usual, his tunic dusted with chaff from threshing. He groans as he sits, and you set down a bowl of thick porridge with honey and chopped nuts saved from the market. He eats without talking much, and you don't press him. Some days the best conversation is none at all. Later, after the children have been bathed and put to bed, you sit on the step outside with your spindle. The twilight is soft. You spin flax into thread, watching the colors of the day fade into indigo. A few stars blink into view. You think not for the first time that no one writes about wives like you. Not in the histories, not in the songs. But that doesn't bother you tonight, because you've come to understand something quietly profound. Your life is the history. Every baked loaf, every remedy, every birth soothed and grief comforted. It's not glory you're chasing, it's continuity. And every time you stretch a meal or mend a shirt or calm a child, you're anchoring your family to something bigger than the world outside. And in that stillness, in that fading dusk, you feel a truth settle deep in your bones. You are not invisible. You are essential. The rooster crows, but this morning you're already awake. Not from worry, not from a baby's cry, but from the weight of habit your body used to rising before the sun, before the village stirs, before even the bread has finished its first rise. You slip from your straw-stuffed mattress wrap, a shawl over your shoulders, and light the hearth from last night's embers, coaxing flame from smoke with practiced breaths. Today, you have a visitor. Your husband's cousin is passing through a merchant's assistant on his way to the next town. He's not a noble, but he fancies himself one smooth words, polished boots, a little too much interest in your larder. Hosting guests, especially family, is a wife's task in your world, and you've been preparing since yesterday. You set aside your usual porridge and make a more impressive spread honeyed oatcakes, cured ham, soft cheese wrapped in cloth, and a boiled egg for each plate. You know it's not expected, but you also know that hospitality is currency not in coin but in reputation, in respect, in whispered stories that might someday reach ears in other households. As the guest eats, you keep the conversation light. You refill his mug before its empty, smile when he compliments your cooking, nod politely, when he talks of markets and wagons and guilds. Your husband listens too, but mostly lets you handle the dance. You can tell he's proud. Not just of the food, but of you, how you hold a room, how you play your part without ever asking for applause. After breakfast, your husband and his cousin leave for the day. You watch them go, then turn back to the kitchen and begin the next round of work: soap, carving, linen folding, grain sorting. The house returns to its usual rhythm. You guide the children in chores, checking their work, correcting with a word or a raised eyebrow. By midday, the guest returns alone. Your husband's gone to inspect a broken cart axle with the blacksmith, and the cousin asks if he might rest. You nod, but your back stiffens just slightly. There's a rule in your bones: never trust charm without calluses. You offer him a stool, keep your hands busy with spinning, and answer only what's needed. When your son wanders in, you send him to fetch water, and when your daughter peeks around the doorframe, you motion her to stay close. He leaves shortly after saying nothing improper, but leaving you with a sense of something avoided. You don't mention it to your husband. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. Because wives in your world know which stories are safe to tell, and which ones must be carried in silence, not for shame, but for safety. Later, with the house quiet again, you take inventory of your stores. The root cellar is holding well, the salted fish haven't spoiled, and the apples are drying nicely on their twine strings. You note what's missing: black pepper, beeswax, an extra spindle. You begin composing a list in your head for the next market day. You teach your eldest how to check a hen for eggs, how to lift the feathers gently and feel for warmth. You let her try even when she fumbles. She's learning. And one day, she'll take your place not just in chores, but in watchfulness, in knowing who to trust, in seeing the shape of danger before it fully arrives. Evening draws in. Your guest eats supper with you again, this time a simple stew and brown bread. You see him glance at your daughter once, and you gently position yourself between them. Just enough. He notices. You both smile. That night after he's gone to the loft to sleep, you sit with your husband by the fire. You don't talk about the cousin. Instead, you mend a tear in your son's cloak and hum a quiet song. Your husband peels an apple with his knife, passing you slices. You eat them slowly, watching the flame flicker across his face. You feel something close to contentment. Not peace exactly, not in a world like this, but balance. A quiet knowledge that your work, your words, your instincts have kept the house whole for another day. And in the hush of that fire-lit moment, you realize something. In a time when women are often treated as property, you've carved out something rarer, a domain, a center, a spine of steadiness in a world that leans on you far more than it ever says aloud. And you carry it all with grace, because that's what medieval wives do. The guest leaves at dawn, a quick goodbye, a flash of polished boots in the mud, and then just the sound of hooves and cartwheels retreating into the hills. You watch from the doorway, arms folded, lips tight. Not from sorrow, and not quite from relief, just observation. In your world, visitors arrive, eat, disrupt, and leave. And the house, your domain, must always return to its rhythm. You sweep the floor slowly, letting the broom push more than dust, pushing away the feeling of someone else's presence. You reflatten the mats, wipe the clay footprints from the doorway, and breathe out. Now it's just your family again. And there's something peaceful about that. Today, the loom calls. In the back corner of your home, beneath a small warped window, stands a wooden loom. It's simple but sturdy. Your father gave it to you as part of your marriage chest. The warp threads are already strung. Today you weave. The rhythm is methodical. Foot treadle, shuttle, pass, beat, repeat. It's a dance without music, a song you know by heart. Cloth isn't cheap. Every thread is earned. You're making linen this time, a bolt meant for shirts, maybe even a fine shift if you have enough. As you work, you think about touch, what it feels like when something you made wraps around your child or is gifted to a neighbor. These are the ways medieval wives leave marks, not with signatures, but with fibers, food, and warm hands. Your daughter sits beside you, mimicking your motions with a toy spindle you carved for her. She watches carefully, soaking it in. Not just the technique, but the posture, the presence. You don't say much. This kind of learning isn't taught in words, it's passed through watching. Later you tend to the poultry. One hen is limping. You pick her up, cradle her gently, inspect the foot. A thorn. You remove it, clean the wound, and wrap it in linen. The hen clucks softly, nuzzling under your arm. You set her back down, and she hobbles off, already healing. This too is part of a wife's life, not just care for people, but for creatures. You know which chickens fight, which cow favors, which pasture, which cat keeps the best mice. You are the keeper of small lives, and they trust you. Midday brings another task, gathering rushes. The floor needs a fresh layer. The old rushes are swept out, damp, broken, filled with crumbs and bits of straw. You toss them to the compost heap and spread new ones, fragrant with mint and lavender, bundled weeks ago and left to dry. It's not glamorous, but when your children step inside and wrinkle their noses with delight, it feels like a small victory. By afternoon, a neighbor stops by, her apron soaked and her eyes wide. Her goat has gone into labor, and something's wrong. She needs help. You don't hesitate. You gather your shawl, your herbs, and your sharpest knife just in case. You walk with her quickly, barefoot, through the mud. Your heart beats faster, not with fear, but with focus. The goat is struggling. You kneel beside it, hands calm, breath steady. You reach in gently but firmly. One leg is twisted. You maneuver it back, whispering quiet nothings, as if the goat understands. And when the kid finally emerges, slick and squirming, you cradle it briefly before placing it near its mother's face. She licks it. It bleats. You exhale. The neighbor cries and kisses your hands. You wave her off. You've done this before. You'll do it again. These are the hidden miracles of daily life. As the sun sinks, you return home, your apron stained, your arms tired. Your husband nods when you tell him. She's lucky to have you, he says. You don't respond. But later, when you scrub your hands with salt and vinegar, you catch your reflection in the wash basin and see something strong staring back. That night, your family eats well, stew, fresh rushes underfoot, fire crackling. Your daughter hums a weaving song. Your son plays with a carved horse. Your husband rests with his head tilted back, his fingers still stained from hay and oil. And you sit with your spindle spinning, not just thread, but the center of the home. You're not loud, you're not revered in books, but everything turns around you, quietly. steadily, unshakably. You awaken with the ache of yesterday still settled in your shoulders, the kind that reminds you you've lived through something, maybe just a long day, or maybe one of those quiet triumphs no one else will ever notice. You stretch gently, careful not to wake the children, and pad to the hearth. The coals are cold. You'll need to restart the fire from scratch. You stack the kindling slowly, adding twigs and a curl of dry moss, then breathe life into the fire as if it were something sacred. You think not for the first time about how many days of your life have started exactly this way: cold hearth, sleepy breath work, waiting silently in every corner. But there's comfort in this ritual. Predictability is its own kind of peace. The day ahead is for repairs. Your husband has mentioned that the shed roof is sagging. Not collapsed yet, but the beams are soft in the middle, and the weight of wet thatch is starting to bend them. You bundle a midday meal, bread, dried meat, and a skin of small ale, and head out with him to take stock. He climbs the ladder while you hand him tools, your arms raised, your head tilted skyward. You work well together. No need for talk. You know when to brace a post or tie off a rope, and he knows when to glance down and ask if you're all right. The roof is patched by midday, not perfect, but safe. For now. Back inside, you turn your attention to clothing. The children's tunics are showing wear at the elbows, and your own bodice seam is coming loose. You sit near the window where the light is strongest and take up your needle. Stitch by stitch, you rebuild the fabric of your family, quite literally. While you sew, your youngest sits beside you with a tangle of wool, trying to copy your motion. You don't correct her. Her fingers are clumsy but eager. You let her jab herself with the needle once and watch her surprise. Then you show her gently how to hold it so it glides. It's not about the stitches today, it's about the memory of your hands. In the afternoon, a knock at the door breaks your rhythm. It's the Reeves' wife, pale and strained. She comes with a request. Could you come see her mother? The old woman has a cough, deep and rattling, and no one in the house knows what to do. You gather your pouch of herbs and follow. The house is dim, heavy with the scent of stale air and old wool. The woman lies beneath blankets, skin drawn, eyes glazed. You crouch beside her and feel her forehead. Hot. Too hot. You make a tea of elderflower yarrow and honey, instruct her daughter to keep the cloths cool, to prop her up gently so she can breathe easier. You stay a while, long enough to see color return to the old woman's cheeks. Not a cure, perhaps, but comfort. When you leave, the Reeves' wife clutches your hand with gratitude that she doesn't have words for. You return home just before twilight, your skirts damp from walking through the marsh path. The fire's been tended, the children are calm. Your husband has started the evening meal without being asked. He hands you a bowl before you sit. It's a small gesture, but one that says, "I saw your day." And you did see it clearly. You held a roof, guided a needle, soothed a fevered body. You taught, healed, braced, protected. And now you sit in the glow of your home, watching the shadows flicker against the wall, knowing you've earned every mouthful of stew. Tomorrow will bring its own rhythm. More work, more mending, more quiet miracles. But tonight, you feel the warmth of something rare, being needed without being used. You rest your hands on your lap and your fingers still humming with memory, and listen to the sound of your family breathing, eating, living, woven together by the threads you spun. The moon is still visible when you wake, a pale ghost hanging low above the trees. It's market day, one of the few mornings where you don't move slowly. The house must rise early, the animals must be fed, and your baskets must be packed just so. You've been preparing for this all week. Dried herbs tied in bundles, root vegetables scrubbed, a small wheel of cheese aged just enough to impress. Market days aren't just about trade. They're about presence, about being seen, being remembered, reminding the town that you, your household, and your labor are real, valuable, and dignified. You braid your daughter's hair with quick, deft fingers and hand her the smaller basket. She's old enough now to help, and she walks beside you on the muddy road with a quiet pride in her step. Your son trails behind, humming softly, fascinated by the cartwheels turning ahead. The market square bustles already. Merchants shout prices, chickens flutter in cages, old women haggle over onions. You find your usual spot near the bread seller and lay out your goods. You greet the tanner's wife, the butcher's apprentice, the monk, who always asks about your dried nettles. Each exchange is layered not just coins for goods, but trust for memory, kindness for future favor. You trade your cheese for beeswax, your herbs for sewing needles, your apples for a sack of barley. Every item you carry back isn't just nourishment. It's a story, a connection, a thread tying your household to the wider world. There's a woman you don't recognize, her dress finely, made her accent clipped. A noblewoman's servant, perhaps. She eyes your elderflower bundles and asks quiet questions about how you dry them. You answer honestly, and she nods, buying more than you expected. Her coins are silver, rare. You feel a flicker of pride. After the last bundle is sold, you let your daughter pick a sweet, a small candied plum from the merchant near the fountain. You know it's indulgent, but she beams. These moments, small as they are, teach her joy is allowed too. On the way home, the sun is high. You're tired, your feet ache, but your heart is light. You carried your family's work into the world and returned with its reward. Back home, you unpack slowly, storing goods with care. The children chase each other around the cottage, full of sugar and sun. You allow yourself a smile. Your husband returns from the fields and nods at the new barley sack. "You did well," he says, and he means it. Later, as the fire crackles and stew simmers, you sit down with your daughter and show her how to shape dough into a flat round. Her fingers fumble, but she grins. You guide her gently, flouring her hands, showing her how the dough should feel, not just in the fingers, but in the wrists, in the arms. She laughs when it sticks to her elbow. You laugh too, because here in this moment, you aren't just passing on skills, you're passing on self. The rhythm of the house, the value of labor, the grace of patience. She will remember this. Not just the flour, but the warmth of your voice, the steadiness of your presence. Night falls. The fire dies low. The baskets are stacked. The silver coin is hidden away where only you know. And as you lay down, your body tired and your spirit full, you realize something true. In this world, you don't just survive. You shape it. With your hands, your choices, your presence in the market square, and your quiet laughter in the kitchen. You've built something no ledger could record, a legacy made of labor and love. And that is no small thing. The rain arrives before dawn, gentle at first, then steady, then insistent. You wake to the drumming on the thatch above your head, a soft rhythm that fills the silence before the fire is lit. You wrap your cloak tightly and slip out to check the roofline. No leaks, not yet. But the yard is already puddling, and you know the day ahead will be damp, chilly, and slow. These are the kinds of days that keep everyone indoors. The kind that test a wife's ability to hold the household not just in place but in peace. You begin by stoking the hearth until the room glows. The warmth stretches its arms across the cold stone floor, and the children begin to stir. Their moods are restless. Rainy days breed a certain frustration in little bodies, but you know how to manage it. You assign tasks. Your eldest is to spin wool, your youngest to sort lentils. You make it a game even as you monitor their progress with the eyes of someone who's done this more times than she can count. You choose today to work on your ledger not of coin, but of goods, favors, and plans. You unwrap the cloth bundle where you keep scraps of parchment, bits of charcoal, a tiny quill made from a goose feather. This is where you track what you've traded, what you're owed, what you need. It's a silent system passed from mother to daughter, whispered through generations. You mark down the barley from market day. You add a note about the soap that needs to be cured by next month. You calculate how many apples you can spare for vinegar and how many must be stored for winter. Your husband steps in, dripping and frustrated. The fields are too wet for work. You see the set of his shoulders, the tension in his jaw. The day will test him too. So you offer him a mug of warm ale and sit with him for a bit, saying little. Your presence is sometimes more healing than your words. By midday, the cabin smells of stew and damp wool. You mend a sock by the fire while your daughter reads aloud from a borrowed psalter, her voice careful, her fingers tracing the uneven script. Your son naps with his face pressed to your lap. Your husband carves a wooden spoon near the door, the shavings falling in small curls around his boots. And you hold it all, not in a loud or showy way, but in the quiet orchestration of every glance, every warm meal, every thread passed from hand to hand. Later in the day, there's a commotion at the door. A soaked neighbor, her skirt plastered to her legs, clutching something in her arms. Her youngest has fallen, cut his head. She's panicked. You rise immediately, take the boy, and guide her inside. The wound isn't deep, but it bleeds well. You clean it with wine press. It's shut with linen, bind it tight, and soothe the boy with honeyed milk and a lullaby you haven't sung in years. The neighbor weeps softly, thanking you. You tell her to stay a while, dry off, rest. And she does. In this house, your house, there is always room for those in need. As the storm rages outside, the warmth inside feels earned, protected. You have made this place not just a shelter from wind and rain, but from fear, hunger, and loneliness. By evening, the rain has slowed. The stew is ready. The neighbor's boy sleeps curled on a mat by the hearth. Your own children whisper in their blankets. Your husband stirs the fire and meets your gaze. He doesn't say it aloud, but you see it in his eyes. This works because of you. And he's right. Because being a wife isn't just about spinning, sewing, cooking, or birthing. It's about creating a world that holds others gently even when the outside world threatens to shake them apart. And in this quiet, rain-drenched evening, with the fire burning low and your family resting easy, you feel the weight of that truth and the peace that comes with knowing your role is irreplaceable. You settle into your blanket, close your eyes, and listen to the final drops of rain as they slip from the eaves. You've kept the storm out. You've kept your people warm. And tomorrow, no matter what weather comes, you'll do it all again. The storm passed in the night, leaving behind a world rinsed clean and dripping. You rise early as always, stepping outside with your shawl wrapped tightly, your bare feet pressing into the wet earth. The chickens squawk as you scatter grain, the sheep bleat for fresh hay, and the clouds above begin to thin. The sun is trying, it always does. You head back inside and prepare a simple breakfast porridge sweetened with a touch of apple scrap syrup, the last of the good honey tucked safely away for the winter months. Your husband has already gone to inspect the fields and the children eat quietly, still lulled by the echo of yesterday's rain. Today is for rituals, not the big dramatic ones of church or ceremony, but the small sacred rituals of maintenance, of checking the salt jars, of scrubbing the hearthstones, of repairing the latch on the chicken coop. You begin with the pantry. Every jar, every sack, every woven basket holds something you've prepared, stored, and counted. You run your fingers along the rows of dried herbs, sniffing thyme touching the braided garlic, nodding with silent satisfaction. Then you go to the back of the house and begin laundering. Laundry in your world is not a day of sorting colors and pressing buttons. It is a full-body task. You kneel beside the wash basin, boil water, grate soap, and scrub each tunic, each petticoat, each undersmock with care. The smell of lye and damp cloth fills the air. Your knuckles ache from rubbing, but your mind drifts. You think about how many pieces of fabric have passed through your hands over the years. Clothing, yes, but also burial shrouds, birthing cloths, bandages, wedding veils. Each one a quiet milestone in someone's life. And you were there for all of them, the silent seamstress of fate. Later, while the garments hang in the breeze, you sit with your husband and inspect the tools. The scythe needs sharpening. The axe handle is cracking. You help him patch the cracks with resin and oil the wood until it gleams. Your hands are not his, but they understand the rhythm of labor. You hand him nails before he asks, wipe sweat from his brow, and smile when he mutters thanks. As evening approaches, the village bell tolls once then twice a birth. You know that rhythm well. 3 slow chimes would mean death. But 2, a new life. A neighbor's house will be full tonight. You nod quietly and send your daughter to bring a gift, a small jar of lavender salve and a strip of clean linen. You made them months ago for just this reason. She returns, flushed and excited. The baby is healthy. The mother is tired but smiling. You feel a warmth spread through you, not unlike the coals beneath the soup pot. Another life. Another wife one day. Another household to shape and hold. Dinner is simple, just lentils and leeks, but everyone eats with hunger. Your son makes a joke that sends the table into laughter, and for a moment, the room feels larger, brighter. You catch your husband looking at you, not just admiring, grateful. And as you clean the bowls and set them to dry, you pause and trace your reflection in the basin's water. There you are. Not a queen, not a saint, not a name anyone will write in a history book. But you are the story nonetheless. You are the one who knows which herbs to boil, which baskets to repair, which child needs comfort before they ask. You are the pulse of the home, the steward of its fire, the keeper of all that cannot be measured in coin or counted in crops. And in that stillness with the wind drying linen on the line, and your hands damp from soap, you feel it again, that steady, humble truth that anchors your world. You don't need to be remembered by others to be unforgettable to the ones you serve. You just need to keep doing what you've always done, live with care, love with quiet strength, and let the small rituals become your legacy. You're awake before the light reaches the window, stirred not by sound or urgency, but by the soft pull of habit. You lie still for a moment, listening to the breath of your children, the wind brushing against the shutter, the fire's soft purr in the hearth, from the coals you banked so carefully the night before. These moments, silent, sacred, are yours alone. Today is a festival day, not a grand one, not a saint's feast or midsummer, but the kind of quiet, holy day woven into the rhythm of medieval life. A day of reflection, rest, and perhaps, if time allows, renewal. You dress in your cleaner gown, one you saved for days like this. The stitches are your own, and the embroidery at the cuffs, though small, is done in your mother's style. You light a candle at the small wooden altar in the corner, kiss your fingers, and touch the carving of the Virgin. You murmur a prayer not just for protection or health, but for clarity, for calm, for strength. The morning begins with bread baking, as most do, but today you add rosemary and dried currants saved just for this occasion. The dough rises with the warmth of your body, and you mark each loaf with a cross before sliding it into the clay oven. The smell alone is a blessing. Your daughter helps you polish the brass candlesticks, her tongue poking from the corner of her mouth as she works with careful pride. Your son tries to catch a frog by the well. Your husband splits wood in measured rhythm outside. You don't speak much, and you don't need to. The day carries a hush with it like a blanket over the shoulders of the village. At midday, you prepare a wash of herbs, mint yarrow, a touch of chamomile, and pour it over your face and hands. A small act of luxury, a renewal. You wrap your hair in a linen scarf and feel for just a moment something akin to youth again. A neighbor stops by and leaves a small bundle at your door, 2 pears, and a piece of honeycomb wrapped in a cloth. You smile. You've traded favors like this for years. No need for notes or explanation, just grace passed back and forth quietly and often. By afternoon, the parish bell tolls for prayers. You gather your children and walk to the chapel. It's small, cool, and simple. The priest drones his sermon in Latin, and though you catch only half the words, the meaning lives in the repetition. The call and response, the candles, the rustle of others kneeling in the pews. This is community, its voice, its breath. Afterward, there's time to visit a friend who recently lost her father. You don't bring advice, you bring bread and a story about your own father and how he used to sing off-key. She laughs through her tears. That's enough. As the sun slips lower, painting the sky in ribbons of gray and gold, your family gathers around the table for the special meal. Nothing extravagant, just the rosemary bread, cheese-dried beans, with a hint of clove, but the children are content, and your husband reaches across the table to squeeze your hand. His thumb traces the back of your palm slowly, wordlessly, gratefully. After the meal, you take time to mend your soul, not with needle and thread, but with stillness. You sit by the hearth wrapped in a wool shawl, watching the flames flicker like old memories. Your thoughts drift not to what must be done tomorrow, but to who you are in this moment. Not just a wife, not just a mother, but a keeper of time, a witness to generations, a woman who holds the sacred in the everyday. And tonight, that is enough. You let your breath fall into rhythm with the flames. And for once, you allow yourself to simply be. Still, whole, and beautifully human. The air has that golden weight to it, the kind that comes near harvest when even the breeze feels tired and full. You step outside just as the sun crests the horizon, stretching shadows across your little patch of earth. Everything is still except for the coo of a dove and the rustle of leaves too dry to cling much longer. It's time to start gathering. Not just crops, but moments. Not just herbs, but thoughts. You've spent the whole year pouring yourself into others, into your family, your neighbors, the rhythm of the land. Now, as the world tilts slowly toward colder days, you begin to draw inward. You collect, store, preserve. The children help gather the last of the garden beans, hands stained green, and bellies full of the ones they couldn't resist nibbling. You bundle sage and thyme and hang them to dry above the hearth, already imagining the soups they'll flavor in February. The apples are mostly gone from the trees now, but you pick what's left, soft, imperfect, but still good enough for sauce. You pause often, not out of exhaustion, but out of a growing sense that the work itself is a kind of prayer. Later, in the cool shade of your cottage, you begin rendering fat into tallow. The fire pops. You stir the pot slowly, watching the clear liquid separate from the pale, waxy chunks. It's not a glamorous task, but it's how you make candles. Light for the winter. You dip the wicks one by one, letting each layer cool before you dip again. It's repetitive, calming, satisfying. And just like that, you realize so is much of your life. Dip, cool, repeat. The rhythm of survival made sacred by the intention you pour into it. Your daughter asks if she can help. You show her how to twist the flax for a new wick. Her fingers fumble, but her smile blooms. It smells funny, she giggles. You laugh, too grateful she'll remember the smell of tallow and the warmth of your laughter long after the candle has burned away. As evening approaches, your husband returns from the fields, a bushel of wheat slung over his shoulder. You meet him at the gate, take some of the weight without a word, and carry it in together. That's what partnership looks like in your world. Not romantic speeches, but shared burdens, quiet glances, a hand reaching out at just the right moment. Dinner is simple. Roasted onions, a loaf of barley bread, and the last of the salted fish. You eat slowly. No one says much. The kind of silence that only exists in homes where peace lives. Before bed, you open the chest at the foot of your bed. Inside are your winter things, thicker wool furs, a cloak you haven't worn since last frost. You add to it today's new candle, another jar of dried mushrooms, a scrap of embroidered linen you stitched by lamplight. You close the lid gently, like sealing a promise. And then as the fire fades and the room darkens, you settle into bed beside your husband. The children sigh in their sleep, nearby limbs sprawled like ivy. You stare at the thatch above your head and let your thoughts slow. Tomorrow will come. So will frost and work and aching joints and soft tears shed in private. But tonight you've done enough. You have gathered and tended and mended and soothed. You've taught and fed and remembered and prepared. And though the world outside may never carve your name into its stone, the people who sleep under your roof will carry your quiet strength in their bones. They may not know how many times you've stood watch at the hearth, or stitched a seam that spared them from cold, or whispered a prayer over their fevered brow. But they are made of those moments, and that is legacy enough. And now, with the fire gone to embers and the room wrapped in hush, it's time to let go of the day of the chores, the memories, the weight you've carried so steadily. You've walked through the quiet corridors of a medieval wife's world, felt the ache in her fingers, the pride in her patience, and the fierce softness she carried in the folds of her apron. Close your eyes for a moment. Picture her hands again, rough from work, yet gentle enough to cradle a child's face. Picture the glow of her hearth, the steam from her stew pot, the soft rhythm of her breath as she stitched by firelight. In every movement she offered care. In every task she shaped the world around her. And perhaps in some quiet way you feel a little closer to her now. Not just because you've heard her story, but because her rhythm isn't so different from your own. The steady march of days filled with tending, fixing, loving, and hoping. You've earned your rest. Let the hum of the past settle like dust on an old oak beam. Let the imagined flicker of a candle dance behind your eyelids, casting gentle shadows. There's nothing left to do. No harvest to bring in, no bread to knead, no sick to soothe. Just breathe. Let each breath be slower than the last. Let your body soften into the bed beneath you, every muscle uncoiling like twine from a spool. Let the hush of history cradle you now, quiet and kind. You're safe here. You're still. You're home.